Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the all-new Lexus UC, better known as the Lexus version of the Toyota 86. So in the first part of this video we're going to talk about the confirmed information we have so far, then we're going to get into what the potential specifications are for the car. Then we're going to get into whether or not Lexus is actually going to build this car, and then finally we'll sum things up with whether or not this will actually be worth looking into. Let's get into the video. Now let's talk about this new Lexus UC, and first off let's start with the confirmed information. So on the confirmed side, we pretty much just had some rumors initially that Lexus might steal the 86 platform and make their own car, and then we got some spy shots recently, and obviously I'll include those in the video, but basically it shows an 86 with the Lexus front grille. It looks really good if you ask me. I actually prefer the look of that compared to the regular 86, but I mean, that's just me personally. You guys know I'm a big fan of Lexus styling. And so that's pretty much what we have confirmed is we have these rumors that Lexus might be building this car, and now we have this prototype with an 86 that has a Lexus grille, and that's pretty much it. Now if we go to the unconfirmed side, we can talk about what this car might actually be. So again, from an exterior perspective, they pretty much would just keep the car pretty similar to the 86 and the BRZ, just make it look a little bit more like a Lexus. So again, with the spy shots, do the Lexus front grille, Lexus badges, maybe have different taillights so that they're kind of more towards the Lexus theme, right? They do like check mark taillights, and then maybe they do that with the accent lighting on the front end. Maybe they add some LED accent lights that look like the Lexus check mark as well. And so that's what it looked like aesthetically pretty much. Now from a performance standpoint, right now the 86 and the BRZ use a naturally aspirated 2.4 liter flat four cylinder that goes through a 6-speed manual transmission. You can get an automatic as well, but I don't really want to talk about the automatic because just if you get that car, don't get the automatic. It's all about the manual. Now in terms of power outputs, it's good for 228 horsepower and then 184 pound-feet of torque, which is more than the previous generation, but still it's a small naturally aspirated engine, and the power figures leave a little bit to be desired if you ask me. Now with the Lexus version, my hope is that they would offer this with a more, I guess, aggressive powertrain, just something that has more power, right? They could stick with that flat four cylinder, or they could at least throw in, you know, a hybrid aspect to it, which, I mean, I'm not super excited about the idea of that, but I mean, it still would be cool because it would have more power, but then that adds weight and complexity, which this car's all about lightweight and not being complex. So they could do that, or what they could do is there's a bunch of powertrains that Lexus has available. On the high side of things, they've got the 5-liter V8, which they probably wouldn't throw in that car because it's a huge engine for such a little car. That would be awesome. I would be all about it, but they probably won't do that. They've got their new twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6. Again, that would be awesome because it'd have tons of power, tons of torque, but they probably won't do that. However, what they do have is they have a turbocharged 4-cylinder that is in the Lexus NX SUV. And that engine would actually be pretty good in the 86. The power figures are really nice with the NX, and so they could just, you know, tune that differently for this basically Lexus UC, and I think that'd be great. Obviously, it would be kind of weird to have that powertrain because it's not a flat 4-cylinder in the UC, since that car was built with a flat 4-cylinder, but I mean, I'd rather have that than a naturally aspirated flat 4-cylinder, and that's just me personally. Now, aside from the engine, if we go to the transmission, they'll for sure do an automatic because, I mean, every single car in Lexus's lineup has an automatic. Now, will they still offer the manual? I don't know. If they get rid of the manual, that would be a huge disappointment, and I don't think the car would sell well whatsoever because, again, most people buying that car want the manual transmission. That's what that car is all about, so hopefully they stick with that. Now, if we go from that to the suspension standpoint, they could go one of two ways. So if they want to tune this more towards the luxury side, they could soften up the suspension, do different tires that are a little bit less aggressive so it rides smoother. Or if they're smart, which I know they are, they could make this into kind of like an F car, right? Where they make it so the suspension is more sport tuned, right? So they firm up the suspension, do more aggressive tires, and make it so this actually handles better than the BRZ and then the 86. I think that is the route to go. I think that would be awesome, right? They could call it like the Lexus UCF or F Sport, you know, depending on how aggressive they actually make things with the car. Again, I think that's the route to go. I think the luxury route would be a huge mistake. And then if we go to the interior, right, it would probably be pretty similar to the 86 and the BRZ, just a little bit nicer material-wise. But again, hopefully they go that sport route, right, where they make it kind of like an F-type interior. So again, if you guys haven't seen like an RCF interior, something like that, I think would be really cool in that car if they kind of went for that theme. So again, nicer materials, but then more on the sporty side, so Alcantara, all that kind of stuff. I think that would look really good with the car. But again, that's what we have on the confirmed side, and then that's what the car could potentially look like. I think in its best form, if they did things right, what they would do is, again, they'd make this an F-type car, so they would do sport tuned suspension, more aggressive tires, maybe even a wing on the back, right? And then they would put a more powerful engine under the hood. They'd stick with a 6-speed manual, and they just make this a really fun, exciting car. And if they did that, I think this car would actually sell really, really well. So will Lexus actually build this car? And the answer is maybe. There's a lot going for it and there's a lot going against it as well. So the things going for it, again, I think it's really cool. They could have a new take on the BRZ and the 86, a more luxury version, or again, a more performance-oriented version. I think overall, that'd be really cool. I think there'd be a lot of buyers for it as well if they do the performance side of things, because then you could have, right, the cool luxury car flex on the outside with the styling, because there's a lot of people that's why they buy luxury cars, is they want to be able to flex that they bought a luxury car. But then it would still have fun driving dynamics, and it would just be this really cool sporty version of the 86. So I definitely think that's a huge pro going for it if they do it right. Now, con going against it, the biggest con is going to be pricing and also the Supra. So obviously, it being a more expensive version of the 86 and the BRZ might price a lot of people away from purchasing it, again, if they don't do things right in terms of the powertrain and performance and all that. And so you'd have this really expensive small two-door car that's not super practical. They would have a small buyer base, and yeah, so that's one thing going against it. And the other thing is the fact that the Supra exists, right? We've got the 2.0 Supra and the 3.0 Supra, and if they made a Lexus version of the 86, it would be pretty similar in price, at least to the 2.0 Supra, if not the 3.0 Supra. And so if they had it similar in price, right, you're going to have kickback from Toyota saying, no, you don't need to build that. We already have this. If people want that, they can buy the Supra. And then on top of that, it actually might take sales from the Supra, and so then you get even more pushback from Toyota. And the reason that it could potentially do that is if they give it a manual transmission and they give it a decent amount of power, it would be a better car than the Supra. Yes, that 8-speed automatic is cool, but it is not a manual transmission. And so yeah, I definitely see some kickback from Toyota in terms of kind of like neutering this Lexus version of the car from a performance standpoint. And so then it would kind of be a hard sale, like especially if it was in that $40,000 range and it still had the same boxer engine. It's like, no, that is not, like, that's not a good value at all. But again, if they gave it more power and performance, and it was, again, in that $40,000 range, and it was, again, similar in power and performance as a Supra 2.0, then it's going to be completely stepping on Toyota's feet. And so then I think there's going to be some kickback that way. And so it's kind of up in the air as to whether or not they'll do it. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot going for it, and there's quite a bit going against it as well. Let's get into whether or not you should get this Lexus UC if they make it, and then we'll just sum things up. So I think the only reason you should get this car is if they do things right. So again, if they make it performance oriented, if they give it a manual, right, keep the manual transmission, and if it's, you know, pretty reasonable from a pricing perspective. So right now with the BRZ and the 86 fully loaded, right, we know they're going to be in the $30,000 range. If this was in the $40,000 range, but again, it had a stronger turbocharged engine, it has obviously the Lexus branding on it, it has a nicer interior, and has some sportier elements from a suspension standpoint, maybe from an active aero standpoint as well, like it's just like a full-on little Lexus race car, then I think 100% it's worth it. But if they don't go that route and they go the luxury route, give it an automatic transmission, no, I would just not even consider it. And so if they do things right, I think it'll be worth it as long as the pricing makes sense and as long as they add enough value to it to where it makes sense to get that over the BRZ and the 86. But aside from that, that's going to sum things up for today's video. If you happen to be stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe, comment down below what you think. And then as always, if you do feel like my videos are of value to you, I'm going to include a link to my Patreon in the description down below. I'd really appreciate your support over there. I'll see you guys.